Alright, so on the next episode of Two Senile, we're going to talk about Star Ocean. Now I know that name hasn't exactly rung the bells in the halls of RPGs in a very, very long time. Everything after 3 pretty much was trash. Now don't get me wrong, I'm well aware that they weren't intending on making trash, but to quote a developer whose name escapes me who used to make Hitman games, we in the game design and development world, yes this is paraphrasing, essentially made what we thought was right or people were going to like and then went back into our ivory towers. However, once we got done and realized, oops, we made a mistake and people didn't like certain things, normally we would move on to something different when we get to the next title. Now, no one in particular can prove what exactly has been or is and is not wrong when it comes to Star Ocean and where it truly went bad, but that doesn't mean we can't try to guesstimate. I won't bore you with the details or a long lore dump, because again, this isn't that type of content. Plus, every single game has like an encyclopedia built into it, if not a damn thesaurus in the menu system. So let's just say if you want to know anything that's going on in that world, you can find it out. And it's explained a lot better than Guilty Gear and Kingdom Hearts. So yeah, I'm taking shots. And I'm not missing. Essentially, they didn't move into the 3D era until it was, more safely established. So essentially, they played the 2D then 2.5D game. However, Star Ocean 3, or more specifically, Star Ocean 3 Director's Cut for North Americans, because we never got the original, also subtitled Till the End of Time. That's when a game was born and went into the halls of legend. Now, the original version isn't something that I particularly have ever played because it was only in Japanese and it's an RPG. Literally one of the hardest games to, navigate when it's completely in a language you don't read or understand. But essentially it follows the tale of a boy who's named Fate. Yes, the irony is there. Moving on. Fate ends up on a space adventure, for lack of a better term, and eventually he meets and befriends and teams up with various aliens on his quest to get back home, which inevitably ends with him, possibly saving or not saving the entire universe. Now, the chronological order for these games isn't particularly in order. In fact, technically, 3 is really thought of as the furthest in the timeline, and for one specific reason. Now, from this point going forward, while you see me on screen, this is a spoiler section. I am a god of destruction, this is true. But I do not destroy innocence. So, if you want to skip to the part where I'm off screen or on the timeline it shows you that spoiler is no longer in session, feel free to do that. I'm going to give you about 5 seconds before I go into it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so essentially the characters throughout the course of their journey learn that the universe is basically being attacked and destroyed by essentially some type of super hybrid dragon type thing, giving off some mad Bahamut vibes that no one in the world can touch or destroy. So immediately comparables to both, Final Fantasy's Bahamut monster and simultaneously Xenosaga's Gnosis monsters can be made. However, eventually over time, the characters learn that they can find a way to actually hurt them, as well as meeting characters who quote unquote aren't actually characters. See, at a particular point in the game, the characters leave the MMO that they're in. No, they're not playing a game. They find out that they are artificially intelligent non-beings, I guess would be a good term, from a very popular MMO that is getting ready to be canceled and get deleted. So the game switches from traditional storytelling, galaxy adventure, planet hopping from time to time, to stopping your existence from being deleted because, the creator wants to delete you. However, after this supposed deletion, the characters are seen to still exist in some way, shape, or form that is unexplained, leading many people, or not many because no one ever got an explanation, but leading people like me, who was going to make a theory after this, to believe that instead of ending up in, the recycling bin or being removed from existence, their connection with the real world was severed, and instead what's happened is they are a free-flowing, free-form secondary dimension / universe and galaxy that the creators who made the game no longer have access to. However, at the same time, if they made the link in the connection, whether it's by accident or by choice, and someone else got rid of it, or one of the other creators got rid of it, it stands to reason that it may be possible for them to relink it. Spoiler over. So essentially, long story short, everything was doing fine until they got past that little 3 mark. Star Ocean 4 was met with
No! No!
Universally considered terrible design work. By the time it came out, a lot of things that it had within it that might have seemed revolutionary back in the day were considered boring or stale. And also, there were certain elements about their own combat system that naturally didn't really jive well with many players. They developed a dodge mechanic instead of a built-in barrier system to, help you get away from certain techniques. However, because every character had a different one, some people immediately were considered better than others. Most of the cutscenes involve watching the characters try to speak, and no matter what language option you're on, none of their mouth flaps really match up. It was basically outdated tech. I'm assuming that they didn't really know that the PlayStation 3 was coming and they started it on the PS2, and usually it's considered the smart thing if you know your game's coming out the end of the cycle, do a dual release or make it exclusive to the new system. However, unfortunately, a lot of things happened. They didn't even have a cast that was half as big as the old one, mind you, it was a director's cut. Also, the combat system barely changed, and I mean barely changed. Outside of the evasive maneuvers, if you remove that element, you can almost consider them a carbon copy. And the team attack combo attack function was rarely used, and people, even if they like it, didn't like how it looked, and it wasn't actually appealing as you would think a team attack would be. The story was not terrible, but unfortunately at this point, this is really becoming some form of a cliche, terribly written anime stereotype, as most characters have very generic or non-existent personalities, and any attempt at any form of a plot twist was legitimately met by very, and I stress this, very little changes and alterations that even were seen to last past the full hour after whatever incident happened. The comical moments are generic and also borderline disturbing, I'm not gonna lie.
Who's there?
No. No. No.
Oh, just a cat, huh?
Meow. Meow. Meow.
But you know what? We don't have any cats! Hold it, you perv! I'm not letting you get away with this!
No. No. No.
And also, there's a character who's basically supposed to be, I don't want to say a tween, but close to a tween, who essentially is walking around like a cat stripper and no one thinks to give it clothes. There's a lot of issues that essentially kills interest in it. The game was bland, the character designs were in most cases over-designed, and on top of it, the actual concept and story was not all that interesting. Moving on to 5 though.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Kinda had hopes for that one. Star Ocean's 5 story was less problematic and it seemed like a better balance in, storytelling and perceived quality level. However, there was still some lingering issues, not necessarily with the character designs, but the way the world was made. It seemed as if they had anime characters in a hyper-realistic setting. Also, the combat balancing was a little bit, not depressing, but genuinely disturbing at how outdated it was, and painfully at that. It goes without saying that, essentially, certain elements in any game, especially an RPG series, are going to be removed or added depending on which title you play. And if something doesn't carry over to the next title, it usually means it was bad, or they couldn't get it to work properly and it may be altered and modified. When you get to Star Ocean 5, it seems like they didn't understand the testing, or it was written in a different language. It was very common for characters to have very old moves or reuse moves from previous characters, which is totally fine, it's very common. But when they showed up for the player when you leveled, and what they do were horribly imbalanced and just straight up almost offensively weird. For example, there's a character who's considered to be a noble knight, but he has moves based off of Albel from Star Ocean 3 from time to time. Alabel had a move where he basically summoned small dragon-like demons from up under him to attack and do his bidding. It was a slow move, but it was powerful. That was its job. Why does this noble knight have this? Also, there was the whole issue of the whole, hey, let's have a character look like a fucking stripper situation. There's a character who's literally wearing a checkerboard pattern as clothing.
No! No! No, God!
Ada.
No, God, please, no! No!
And is, well, a high-ranking mage and a very powerful one at that. But she's the only one in the game and within her mage circle running around like this. It was very weird. The story was dramatically improved. They also heavily utilized the already there content of the PlayStation 4 because you can tell this was made from the ground up to be on it. The environments looked disturbingly real, where the characters and how they wore their clothes, or at least 3 of them, seemed very, very out of place. The story can hold you, but the combat became a pain in the ass very quickly. There were so many attacks that were good, but they made no sense canonically for the characters to be able to use. And on top of that, I shit you not, they didn't seem like they had an exact order that they were coming. Because moves that in other games that you wouldn't get till near the end of it, or moves that were literally meant to be secret, were just handed to you. And also, they don't match any known abilities of the characters, which kind of sort of breaks its own story. Can I get into all those moves? No, there's no point. But if you want a better of the two, albeit lackluster entries in Star Ocean, 5 is the better choice, without a doubt. The combat is a little bit more hyperactive because there's more characters in your party and on screen, but it didn't combine well enough to fix all other issues relating to it. You won't find a lot of plot holes. I really do dig the green hair chick, but, well, I have a Tifa type. I'm not gonna lie. Oh, and you can get it pretty cheap. However, there has been a re-release and in one case a remaster of Star Oceans 1, 2, and 3. I strongly recommend getting those. And if it makes you feel any better, Star Ocean is an anthological series much like Final Fantasy. So even though some games may link or be in the same era of time or galaxy, as it were, there's no direct ties. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope you get the new Star Ocean. It doesn't suck and it's worth a revisit.